All right, so this is Fern. My name is Ben, and we're at a place called Moulton Gardens. It's a memorial garden at a place called the John C. Campbell Folk School. They've been here almost 100 years. It's a folk school that teaches art and craft stuff with a kind of a mission behind the approach to education that is collaborative and community based and non-competitive. So what's going on with this space? The folk school doesn't really have any overt sacred space other than this place, which is called Moulton Gardens. And it's a place where people will have their ashes spread. It's a place where people will come sit and pray or meditate or just contemplate nature. It has a really incredible, it's a very overcast day, but it has an incredible view of the mountains here. The main office is through the woods there, kind of the central building hub of the campus. And then there's various studios here. And then for the next, at least eighth or quarter of a mile down the road that way, kind of spread out along the main road here. It's a pretty big school. There's up to 200 students a week. They have new classes almost every week of the year. A bunch of different studios and a bunch of different art forms. But this space was built, I don't actually know, I'm assuming like kind of 70s, 80s, just looking at the design. It has a lot of cool rock work. You're kind of getting it. There's a certain autumnal beauty to the nature right now because it's the middle of winter, but it's a really lush and beautiful place. And we have got a really cool view of the mountains in the distance. But what's going on with this space is they are going to have their 100th year anniversary. They have some funding, and they want to make this a more usable space. And one suggestion was to put in outdoor masonry heaters, kind of in the tradition, either maybe a newer design like with the rocket mass heaters, but more likely in the kind of traditional vernacular folk traditions of masonry heaters and stoves of Europe and Asia. And the idea was to have a heated bench so that we could expand the time of year in which it would be a very usable space for students and people in the community and staff and everyone in the area. So there's a few questions. It's kind of an interesting space. I think it has never really gotten a lot of use, and you could argue that a memorial garden should kind of have this design, but let me show you. As you approach, you actually have to wind through this little footpath in the woods. So it's definitely not very accessible for like handicapped people or someone who has trouble walking. But usually you have to wind through this little, not very well marked path, and you come in on the side. And there's some really beautiful old rock work. You come in, everything's kind of overgrown and looks like it's kind of a disuse. And I've been here for years, and I have basically never seen. It's a rarity to see anyone in the space, which is a shame because it's a really beautiful space. And let me show you. So my thoughts on it are that, this is kind of the heart of the campus towards this direction. And my thought is that you got this big wide open space, and if you wanted to get more use, you would have to open up the flow of energy into this space. And currently you have to kind of climb up. Like there's a couple foot, let me just show you, it's a couple foot drop. So we got to jump down here. Come on, Fern. And we have a big ugly cinder block wall. So it's a very unwelcoming, it's a beautiful little space, but it's a very unwelcoming space from the outside. I think I like the wall. I like some kind of separation to give a sacredness to the space and stepping up into the space. It definitely would benefit dramatically from like just some nice rock work instead of cinder blocks. But what I think is like nature is trying to create the path that I think really this space would kind of really be opened up and used far more often. Is if you had like a ramp, maybe you could do stairs, but I kind of like the idea of a ramp. You're kind of working with the natural slope here anyway. Let's see if I can get. So I would picture kind of opening, just putting a little kind of gravel path with a wall here and a little ramp or stairs up into the space with kind of a wide opening thing that kind of draws you in. And so that's what comes into this stove advice where, I think that there's, it's an odd niche case where I just haven't found a lot of information on outdoor masonry benches. And I wonder if part of that is that it's hard to get proper flow for the exhaust from the firebox across something that's lower than the stove. And what's interesting about this space is that it probably, and like this is a naive assumption, but I would assume that putting a firebox here, and maybe you have a small low wall, you've got your little firebox, and you've got your bell that kind of would form like a, ideally I think what I would think would be amazing would be to put one on each side and have like, you've got your first bell kind of forming a little shape here on each side of that entrance. And you got a central thing. And then you've got a little bench that leads directly from this wall into the space, I don't know, 10 or 15 feet. And I don't know the practicality of whether to make that curved or not. I can kind of picture it as just like a gentle, graceful arch on each side, kind of leading you into the space. People can come. You can have a little firewood crib off to the side here on each side. Throw some firewood in, light a fire, hang out, and after a little bit, they've got several hours of like warm, comfortable seating so that you can be a lot more comfortable, hang out with your friends, play music, quietly meditating nature, whatever you want to do in the autumn, in the spring, even in the middle of winter with a jacket on. So yeah, just looking for feedback. Like it seems like there's not a lot of great information on that, but it does seem like there's a lot of kind of interesting innovation happening now in these fields as people apply ancient technologies to kind of modern situations and problems. And this seems like an interesting use case for that. So anyone who's got ideas, recommendations of books, of people who do this kind of work, this organization has some actual funding to do some nice work. They've got a lot of people in the community who would volunteer, who have knowledge in stonemasonry and things like that. And also I had the idea of like, could you put a little in your first bell? Could you make that an oven or something? So there's a lot of different ideas, like so people could come and also they got their warm bench. They could throw some food in there and have a communal, sharing of food and stuff. Anyway, thanks for your time. And if anyone has any ideas about that, I'd love if you comment and give me recommendations or ideas. And thanks and have a good one.